Okay, so I'm talking to David Zetland here again. David, in cities in most countries in the world, water comes out of the tap isn't safe to drink, and so most people will drink bottled water or from groundwater pumps. Over the last decade or so, bottled water has become much more popular in rich countries in, say, Europe and North America, Australia, with lots of people believing that there are health benefits to drinking bottled water and that it's safer. Um, do you think people should be drinking bottled water because it's healthier?
Uh, no is a short answer. I think that in most developed countries, I'm in Amsterdam right now. I drink the tap water all the time, and when I'm in Southern California, despite the fact that that water has gone through a dozen toilets and hundreds of miles of aqueducts and canals and treatment plants and up and down. Despite all those things, I still drink the tap water in Southern California. So, from the perspective of health and safety, sorry, I'm choking up here with this Colorado River water. Despite the fact that it comes all this way, it's quite safe. And the big the so is it and I'm stumbling because it's bottled water is a consumer product to me. It's like Coca-Cola. It's like McDonald's. And if people want to drink bottled water, I don't think it's a big deal from an economic perspective. I do know it's a big deal from a resources perspective because it takes a lot of energy to take the water from some spring or usually from some filtering plant that uses municipal water, put it on a truck, take it to the store, have a crate of water at the store. Someone buys a crate of water, they take it to their car, they drive it home, they put it in the refrigerator, they take it out, then they go about their day and they drink a half a liter of water. And maybe they pay 25 cents for a half a liter bottle if they buy it in bulk, or maybe they pay $2 if they buy that bottle at the airport. So the money that they pay represents, number one, many resources that are being used to deliver this delightful beverage. It also represents a profit sometimes for various vendors. The biggest profits are usually in airports and sports stadiums and schools where they have these monopolies over the distribution of bottled products. But that's you could say that about many consumer products, about big screen TVs, about big watches. So the people get upset about bottled water because they think other people should be drinking tap water, and you could say the same thing about people should be riding bicycles instead of driving their Ford car. And I think most of the discussion around bottled water in developed countries is more or less a fashion or consumer choice question. On the other hand, there's two caveats. First one, obviously, is in developing countries, and you can't drink the water because it's not safe. Bottled water is a lifesaver. And when I was in Saudi Arabia, I would drink a lot of bottled water because they didn't have 24/7 pressurized water in their system. They would have water that came once a week in terms of the tap would be dry for a week, and then the water would turn on, and you'd have a day to fill the tank in your house, and then you would use that water all week. Now, all kinds of stuff can get in the tank in terms of contamination and so on, or the pipes, because they're being used once a week, they can crack, and you can have literally sewage leaking into the pipe. So the water wasn't safe. And in developing countries, I drink bottled water quite often. The other problem, which is significant everywhere in the world, including developed countries, is what to do with the bottle waste that comes from bottled water. And what I find is that the worst case, which is quite common, is you go for a long hike into nature, and someone has taken their bottle of pristine water, drunk the refreshing water at the end of their hike, at the end of the trail, and then, or halfway, let's say, because they go to the end of the trail. They drink their half-liter bottle, they throw it on the side of the trail, they hauled it already 5 kilometers, they throw it on the side of the trail, then they walk back 5 kilometers. So they don't take their garbage out, their rubbish. And that, to me, is disgusting from a personal choice perspective, and it is definitely a drawback of having disposable plastic bottles of water. The alternative is someone brings their own metal or high reusable plastic bottle, and they do that. I think that's fine. The other alternative is you take your stupid bottle back with you. It's not that hard. But that's the issue. Plastic pollution to me is a bigger problem in developed countries. There's long debates about whether or not tap water and bottled water is safer in developed countries because of different regulators and so on. I think it's up in the air. The regulators can fail in both cases. The bottled water companies can have a reputation to defend. The utilities can be lazy. There's no clear answer as far as water quality is concerned in developed countries.
So you talked a little bit in there about consumer tastes in developed countries, and you mentioned wastewater treatment. Now, this is something that is very normal in some parts of the world. I think the statistic is that a glass of water in London's been through 7 people before you, at least.
And their toilets.
And their toilets, of course. But in other parts of the world, this is a very new thing. And the idea of using treated wastewater. So what do you think are the ways in which governments can help consumers overcome this reticence?
Well, the first thing is to back up one step and go in the middle and say, why don't we treat the water in the first place, right? That's important to decide to treat the water. And there's a political discussion, but mostly it's money, and it's much more expensive usually to build a wastewater treatment plant than a water treatment plant. So you've got communities that have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on that, and what are they getting for that? That means that the wastewater that we flush down our toilets will be cleaned, and then it will be discharged into nature so that we don't harm nature. And a lot of people have a hard time with that because they don't care about nature, or it goes in the ocean. They don't care about ocean. They think that the fish can eat all of the feces and so on. But then when countries and people decide, you know what, we want to have clean rivers. We don't want to have rivers that are eutrophied because there's so much nutrients in there and it kills all the fish and so on. Then you say, well, now we're going to have clean rivers, and then there's an interesting question that comes up economically, which is, wow, we're cleaning the water enough to discharge into the river, so it's cleaner than the water that's in the river right now, and we're taking our drinking water out of that river right now. Why aren't we just taking the water from our wastewater treatment plant and using that for drinking water, which is what you're getting at? And people say, oh my God, that's disgusting. I don't want to drink water from the wastewater treatment plant. Although for them it's totally natural to drink water from the river, which is from someone else's wastewater treatment plant, or someone peed in it or whatever. So long story short, it's not about science, it's about psychology. As far as I can tell, there is nothing to get over the psychology except to get over the psychology. You could go with a dollars and cents kind of perspective and say, if you want to drink water from the river, it'll cost you, say, $50 a month on your water bill. If we want to recycle our wastewater and use that for drinking water, it'll cost you $40 a month on your water bill. That might work for people, but the political discussion around those numbers ends up going back to, I don't want to drink toilet water. So, and the political discussion has to happen before the big investment occurs to do the wastewater recycling. So you can't make it into a simple economic discussion where I can drink recycled wastewater and you don't have to, because we all share the water system. And that's why it ends up going back to this kind of what's called a yuck factor. And I think, to get to your point, are people going to be adopting this? Yes, they are, more and more, especially when the alternative is no water at all, or regulations that say you have to have no lawn or a dead lawn or something like that. It's becoming more relevant in more parts of the world.
In terms of there not being any choice, often wastewater treatment and subsequent consumptive use, and also other supply-side alternatives to water scarcity, such as desalination plants. These things seem to be coming about motivated by worries about water shortages. Do you think that perhaps these more expensive supply-side alternatives could be mitigated somewhat, or not necessary, if there's more work done on demand-side water policy?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So what you're saying, more or less, is you take a city like Sydney or San Diego or Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, or Tel Aviv. And the city has got a number of people who have a certain lifestyle, and they're consuming water. That's their demand. And more people show up, and now there's too much demand for the existing supply, whatever it is. Usually the cheapest supply is from groundwater. The next cheapest supply is usually from surface water, like rivers. And then they say, well, we're running out of supply. We have this demand. We have to go get more supply. So either they import water from a greater distance, which is more surface water, or they build a desalination plant or a wastewater recycling plant. And that is the water managers who are trained often as engineers and who are told by their political masters, you will meet demand. That is their response. Let's build more supply. The funny thing about this is that the cost of building more supply is easily in the billions of dollars for a new plant. And you divide $1 billion among 1 million people, it's still $1,000 a person, which is a lot of money. Then those people get this desalinated water, which costs so much to get, for example, and they water their lawn with it, or they spray down their driveway with it, and they use water just like they used to. So that is that lifestyle, their demand, not making a lot of sense with the supply side. And our earlier discussion was really about how do you reduce, or maybe it wasn't, but if you have a demand which is outpacing supply, you can increase supply, like we talked about, or you can reduce demand. And reducing demand means usually not just asking people to use less, or saying there's a drought, but raising the price of water. This is something you can do proactively. And if you raise the price of water, people won't be watering their driveway, and they will have smaller lawns, or they won't have lawns at all. And in some cases, you can raise the price of water so that the demand falls by enough that, number one, nobody is upset because they still have their showers, they can still have their food, they can still clean their house, they can still have some flowers or whatever. No one is upset, but you also don't spend $1 billion on a new desalination plant. And that's a definite alternative from building more supply side stuff.